God's own country, that's what they call Kerala. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's so special about this place? You sent over a ton of info on Kerala, and I think, well, today we're diving deep, trying to get a real feel for what makes this state, well, Kerala, the landscapes, the history, the people, how it all works, and even how it's run. Kind of like a crash course, but hopefully a fun one.
Yeah, it really is amazing. So much going on in this one little state. And that nickname, God's own country, well, we'll see if it lives up to the hype as we go.
So let's get oriented. Kerala's right there on the southwestern tip of India, right? Karnataka on one side, Tamil Nadu on the other, Arabian Sea stretching out to the west. But it's not just a flat piece of land, is it?
No, no, not at all. Think of it like layers almost. You've got the coastal lowlands, then the Midlands kind of rising up, and then the highlands way up in the Western Ghats. Each one's got its own thing going on.
Okay, so let's start high up then, those highlands. Almost half of Kerala is covered by this part of the Western Ghats. What's it like up there?
Oh, it's dramatic. Seriously. Think mountains, hills, thick forests. It's where they grow all that famous stuff. Tea, coffee, all those spices that made Kerala famous. And then there's Anamudi, the tallest peak, over 2,600 meters high, dominates the whole landscape. Really shapes how people live up there.
But it's not just about what people grow, is it? I mean, you mentioned forests. It's got to be teeming with wildlife, right? Like those sanctuaries, Periyar, Silent Valley, Wayanad.
Exactly. Those are crucial for all the plants and animals that, well, you only find in that part of the world. When you add it all up, it's just an incredibly rich environment. Crucial for all of Kerala, really.
Right, so then you head down, things level out a bit. The Midlands, right? Rolling hills, valleys, more farmland, I'm guessing.
Yep, different terrain, different climate. They grow all sorts there. Coconuts, of course, but also areca nut, rubber, and, well, more spices. Feeds the whole state, this region does.
And finally, down to the coast. Kerala's got a long coastline, right? Almost 600 kilometers along the Arabian Sea. This is the Kerala you see on postcards, yeah? Beaches, backwaters.
Oh, yeah, you got those beautiful sandy beaches, but the backwaters, that's the real draw. You know, the lagoons, lakes, canals, all connected. It's not just pretty either. It's how people got around for ages, transported goods. And then you got all the fishing villages, the ports Kochi, Alappuzha, Baipur. The sea is a big part of life there, especially the backwaters. Really unique ecosystem.
So geographically, it's pretty diverse. And the climate's all about those monsoons, right? Tropical monsoon, the overview calls it. Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. Summer's hot, humid. Then comes the southwest monsoon, Edavapathy they call it. That's where most of the rain comes in, June to September. And then there's another one, not as strong, the northeast monsoon, Tulavarsham, in October, November. Then finally winter comes around December to February. Milder temperatures then. It's a cycle that affects everything. How they farm, their traditions, daily life. It's all tied to the monsoons.
Wow, 2 monsoons. Got to be a huge deal for the whole ecosystem. Okay, let's rewind a bit now. Back in time to Kerala's history, the overview calls it the spice hub of the world in ancient times. That's a pretty bold statement. What made it such a spice powerhouse?
Well, it's all about those spices, right? The variety, the quality, especially in the highlands. But the key thing is this wasn't just a short-term thing. Kerala was trading with everyone, the Mesopotamians, the Romans, Chinese, Arabs, as far back as 3000 BCE. That's a long time to be the go-to place for spices. It shaped everything: their economy, how they interacted with the world, even their culture, with traders coming and going, leaving their mark.
And there were some powerful dynasties back then, too, like the Cheras, right? They seem to be pretty important for a long time.
Yeah, the Cheras ruled from the 1st to the 12th century CE. They weren't just about trade, though. They really pushed the arts and literature, too. What's interesting is that at that time, you had Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism all flourishing together. Shows a real openness to different ideas and beliefs, which kind of sets the stage for the diversity you see today.
Then things shifted in the medieval period. You've got the Zarmans of Calicut coming into power, playing a big role in trade and politics. And this is also when new religions start to take root, right?
That's right. Islam comes in the 7th century, mostly through Arab traders who were already doing business there. And then there's Christianity, which has a really old history in Kerala. They believe St. Thomas the Apostle came there in the 1st century. Later on, European missionaries also had an impact. So you have this long history of different faiths interacting, which is a big part of what makes Kerala's society so unique. It's all about that religious harmony, you know.
And then comes the colonial era. Vasco da Gama shows up in 1498. That's a big turning point, isn't it? Europeans start to get directly involved.
Huge turning point. Bagama lands in Kozhikode, and suddenly there's a direct sea route from Europe to all the riches of the East, especially those Kerala spices. The Europeans went crazy. You had the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and the British all trying to grab a piece of the action.
And in the end, it's the British East India Company that wins out. By the 19th century, they've got control, and Kerala becomes part of the Madras Presidency. But that wasn't the final chapter for Kerala, right?
Nope, not at all. The Kerala we know today, that was born on November 1st, 1956, they merged Travancore, Cochin, and Malabar, all the Malayalam-speaking regions, into one state. They celebrate that day Kerala Piravi. It's a big deal, a symbol of their identity.
Wow, so much history packed in there. From ancient spice traders to a modern state born out of different regions. It's quite a story. Okay, let's talk about the people now. The overview gives us some numbers, tells us about the population.
Yeah, around 35 million people in 2021, and it's densely populated, one of the highest in India. What's interesting is that almost half the population lives in cities now. Shows how things are changing, how people are moving for jobs and opportunities.
And they all speak Malayalam, right? That's the official language. But the overview also mentions English being used quite a bit.
Oh yeah, English is everywhere. In schools, in business, you name it. It's definitely helped them connect with the rest of the world, made it easier for people to go abroad for work or studies.
And then there's the religious makeup, mostly Hindu, but with a lot of Muslims and Christians too. But somehow they managed to all get along, which is pretty remarkable.
It really is. It's centuries of living together, respecting each other's beliefs. They often celebrate each other's festivals, too. It's a real strength for the state, that social harmony.
And you can see that in the stats, too. Highest literacy rate in India, high life expectancy, lowest infant mortality rate. Those aren't just numbers, they tell a story.
Absolutely. They show how much they've invested in education and healthcare, how they prioritize taking care of people. It's a model for other states, really.
So how about the economy? Agriculture and plantations seem to be the big players, and they grow just about everything there, right?
You name it, they grow it. Rice, coconut, rubber, spices, coffee, tea, bananas. The list goes on. And get this, 97% of India's black pepper comes from Kerala. They're still the spice kings, in a way.
97%, that's just insane. Okay, but they can't just rely on spices, right? I mean, with that long coastline, fishing must be huge, too.
Oh, absolutely. Hundreds of fishing villages, big ports like Kochi, Kollam, Kozhikode, provides food and jobs for a lot of people. The sea's a lifeline for them, no doubt.
And then there's tourism. I mean, Kerala's practically synonymous with tourism, right? The overview mentions all sorts of attractions.
Oh, yeah, they've got it all. You want peaceful backwaters, Aleppo, Kumarikam, beautiful hill stations, Munnar, Wayanad, beaches, Varkala, Kovalam, Bikal, and then the wildlife sanctuaries for people who love nature. They got something for everyone, which is why so many people visit.
It's like a tourism buffet. But they're not stuck in the past either. They're making moves in IT and industry, right? With places like Technopark and InfoPark.
That's right, Technopark in Thiruvananthapuram, that was India's very first IT park, and InfoPark in Kochi, that's becoming a major tech hub too. It's important for them to have a diverse economy, create new jobs for all those educated young people.
Okay, enough about the serious stuff. Let's talk culture. Kerala's got some fascinating traditional art forms like Kathakali. That sounds pretty intense.
Kathakali's like nothing else. It's a dance drama with these crazy costumes and makeup. They tell stories through their movements and expressions. It's been around for centuries, constantly evolving. It's a real art form.
And then there's Mohiniyattam, another dance, but this one's done by women. More graceful, I imagine.
Oh yeah, very fluid, very graceful. It's all about telling stories through those elegant movements. Very different from Kathakali, but equally impressive.
And then you've got Kalaripayattu. Now that sounds like something else entirely.
Kalaripayattu is, well, it's serious business, one of the oldest martial arts in the world. It's all about agility, fighting skills, mind-body connection. Shows you just how diverse Kerala's culture is.
We also have Thea and Thea. They sound pretty unique.
Oh yeah, these are ritual performances they do up north. Lots of costumes, makeup, deities, spirits, the whole shebang. They're a big part of life in North Kerala.
Beyond the performances, music and literature are big too, right? I know they're into Carnatic music, and the overview mentions some famous writers.
Carnatic music's got a big following there. And those writers, O.V. Vijayan, M.T. Vasudevan Nair, Kamala Das, they really shape Malayalam literature. They tackled some important social issues,
Now, we can't forget about festivals. Onam's the big one, right?
Onam's the biggest. Everyone celebrates it. It's about King Mahabali coming back, and it marks the harvest season. They make these huge flower carpets, have massive feasts called Savya, and even race those crazy snake boats. It's a big party.
Then there's Vishu, the New Year celebration, and Thrissur Puram. That sounds pretty wild.
Thrissur Puram is insane. It's a temple festival with tons of decorated elephants, parades with traditional music, and fireworks that'll blow your mind. It's sensory overload in the best way possible.
And don't forget, they celebrate Christmas and Eid, too. Shows you that religious harmony in action. Now, just a quick look at the government and politics. It's a two-party system, right?
Pretty much. You've got the Left Democratic Front, LDF, led by the CPI, and the United Democratic Front, UDF, led by the Congress Party. They take turns being in power, each with their own ideas about how to run things.
And they're known for their progressive policies, especially when it comes to health, education, and social welfare. That tracks with all those impressive social indicators we talked about.
Yeah, no matter who's in charge, they always focus on taking care of people. It's in their DNA, and it's paid off big time.
But even Paradise has its problems, right? The overview mentions a few challenges Kerala's facing, like unemployment and brain drain.
Yeah, it's a tough one. They have a highly educated population, but not enough jobs for everyone. So a lot of young people end up leaving to find work, even going abroad. It's a loss for Kerala, really.
And environmental issues are a concern too, like deforestation, climate change, those crazy monsoons causing floods.
Yeah, with so many people living on the coast and the Western Ghats so vulnerable, climate change is a serious threat. They got to be careful, adopt sustainable practices, or things could get rough.
And just like in a lot of places that are growing fast, waste management in the cities is becoming a problem.
Oh, for sure. Figuring out what to do with all that garbage is a challenge. It's a matter of public health, and it affects the beautiful environment they're known for.
Looking ahead, the overview seems optimistic. They talk about sustainable tourism, expanding IT and healthcare, and growing industries in a way that doesn't wreck the environment.
Those are definitely the right areas to focus on. Kerala's got so much potential, beautiful nature, smart people, and a real commitment to doing things right.
Well, after this deep dive, I think we can see why they call Kerala God's own country. It's a beautiful blend of history, geography, culture, and a real focus on people. We've covered a lot of ground, from ancient spice routes to modern technology and everything in between.
It really shows you how a place can be both ancient and modern, how they can prioritize people and still be successful.
It makes you wonder, with such a long history of connecting with the world, from the spice trade to people migrating today and their incredible achievements in areas like education and health, what would you say is the most defining characteristic of Kerala? What makes it truly unique? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kerala. It's been a fascinating journey.